So following up on my last video in regard to the full moon that is coming up next week and the relationship to a possibly stolen election. And I think the way to look at this is something that is happening approximately mid to the end of the week, next week, meaning from Thursday to Sunday, which is the full moon, and how it links to the key players in the drama. Meaning you can see that it does connect to the important people in this conflict and to the American chart as well. Therefore, it becomes a key moment to the American chart because the moon, full moon, is happening across the 25th degree or so of Taurus Scorpio. The sun in November is in Scorpio, therefore the moon is in Taurus, and the American chart features an Aquarius moon in late degrees, therefore it's triggered. Then in terms of the players, what I notice is Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and J.D. Vance all have planetary links to this full moon. In the case of Tim Walz, it's a little bit less clear in that he does have the moon in Aquarius, but it's in earlier degrees. His is the one chart I do not have a birth time for. I'm working only with the birthday, so he's a bit of the outlier here. But let's face it, there are plenty of really important people connected to this full moon. So in the case of Trump, we have his ascendant, his rising Mars in Leo, his midheaven, all being triggered by this full moon. In the case of Kamala Harris, her Jupiter is in those degrees as well, being triggered. Then you have J.D. Vance with his midheaven, his ascendant and his rising Venus and Leo, all being triggered. And then you have Joe Biden, who has late planets in Scorpio that are also being triggered. So by trigger, I mean that the moon happens and we know the major planetary force around this moon is Uranus. And so the shock, energy, unexpected occurrences, something major that changes the landscape. That's provided that it happens. And this is where we go to the next level around, okay, well, here's the full moon happening approximately mid-month, and at the same time we have a Saturn station, which is not that related to the full moon. It's probably better that it isn't, because that would add really complicated energy to the pattern, making it potentially less fruitful, more dangerous. However, the main point is that if something emerges next week within the period of the full moon, that would be a very good signal from the perspective of the election being stolen or there being some major problem that needs to be corrected. And of course, I would love it if it went that way. I don't know if it will, but I'm definitely hoping that it will. If it doesn't happen, I do have to admit that from the perspective of looking at astrology, in the truest sense, astrology, what it is it gives you almost like a system of odds. The odds of something going in a certain direction. And if nothing like this emerges next week, then we look forward to the Mercury station as it goes retrograde, the fact that there's a Mars station in early December, a Neptune station, and so on moving forward. And it could still emerge then. Something could emerge, for sure. But I have to admit that it would be better if we saw this type of information these kinds of news developments on the earlier side, given the power of the full moon together with a planet like Uranus. You know, the full moon will raise the emotions regardless. That's the way it tends to work. And for sure, the energy we're playing with here is related to shocking, unexpected news. And so that, becomes the hope. And other than that, all I can say is that's the astrology that is on the table. And now we will have to see what happens.